Good morning, everyone. We're up here northern Wisconsin. I got up early this morning so that I could come out, do a little fishing, have a little me time. I guess I bring you guys along with me. Just rigging up now. It's about 6:30 in the morning, middle of September. It's beautiful out. We've had just crazy weather, cold weather, then hot weather, cold weather, and right now we're in a span of a little bit warmer weather. It only got down to like 62 last night, which is not cold at all. And water temps are still hovering right around 70, so they're falling, but they're still like late summer, early fall. And they're still good fishing weather. It's just a lot of times the fish are in transition. But I know, because we're up at a lake that I'm familiar with, that this lake should hold true on your summer pattern. So I'm going to fish some weed lines, and I'm going to actually crack a tube is what I'm going to do. So I want to show you guys how I do that. So I've just got here a little core tackle finesse tush, and then I've got here some of the small Maxcent tubes by Berkley. And I'm going to just show you, I guess, how to go about doing it. It's similar to like stroking a jig. It just generates a lot of bites. The tube is one of those baits that I feel like is falling, if I can get this open, falling out of favor with most anglers, which is good for people that like to throw the tube, because the tube overall is just a phenomenal bait. And yeah, so these little 2.5-inch tubes by Berkley, the little Maxcents, fit the tush extremely well. They're perfect. And it's really hard to find actually a good little tube hook that fits a little 2.5-inch tube. So we're going to put this on. I'll finish tying this up and see if we can catch a few fish. We've only got probably an hour and a half. The Fat Tire Festival is going on. It's a big off-road bicycle race that happens up here in the Hayward area, and the boys want to go check that out, so we're going to do that. And I think that's my favorite sound in the world, the loons. I think he's talking to us. I think it's this might be the only time we can get out, because we only came up I guess we came up last night, so we'll be here tonight, but we don't have much time. Anyways, let's see if we can crack a tube and catch a few on this gorgeous morning. That's a lot of times when you're going to get the bite is right on the fall. This one feels good. It's a nice one. Chunky. Right on the fall. Most people do not think about fishing tubes for largemouth. I think everyone always thinks of them as a smallmouth bait. Yeah, he's pulling. He's got it down there. And it is so much a largemouth bait too. That's a nice one. Come here. Good chunky bass. We gotta get that out. Good chunky bass. That's a 2.5. Get him back. So most people think of it strictly as like a smallmouth bait, and man, I'm here to tell you, they catch piles and piles of largemouth. And one of the keys, so I had that bite, I'm fishing just down that weed line. Always throw back to where you caught that fish. And in this case, so I'm throwing the 1/4 ounce 2-aught finesse tush, just our 1/4 ouncer. And in that little tube, you would think it would fall really, really fast. But one of the reasons I love that tush in it is because the weight is longer instead of a normal tube jig head, and it keeps the tube much more horizontal in the water. And because it's horizontal in the water, it just increases the glide. So I'm snapping it. You know, you can see it. You're going. The key to anytime you're cracking a tube, you want your slack line in your from your rod tip to the bait. So I know it's on the bottom, and then I'm gonna hit it as soon as I know that bait's on the bottom. I'm gonna pop my rod tip twice, but I'm doing it to take up that slack. So you know, a lot of times you actually would like to hear your line like snap out of the water like that. And I like to do it twice just because with a tube, it's pretty much emulating a crayfish more than anything. And crayfish will almost always do a double pump. So I feel like that's a good thing. You can just do a single snap if you want. You know, a lot of times it's good just to kind of mix it up a little bit. But because this bait sits a little bit more horizontal, after I snap it up, it tends to glide more than a normal tube. And that's just, to me, is a huge factor in generating those bites. Fish, in my opinion, the fish would much rather eat something that's horizontal in the water column than falling straight vertical. You hit it at the top, coming up. Another nice one. You hit that one right at the top. Come here. Another good one. Little finesse tush tube and another 2.5 pounder, which are pretty quality fish for this lake, actually. Like, we don't catch many fish in that 4-pound range. 2.5 to 3 pounders are nice, good fish. So anytime I can catch them, that's good. Okay, so I'm gonna walk you through it again. So you throw it out, let your bait fall on slack line, but you're line watching. So I'm watching my line as it falls to the bottom. It just hit the bottom. Now I'm not gonna reel up and just drag. What I'm gonna do is drop my rod tip. I thought one bit it there. So when it hits the bottom, I drop my rod tip and then snap it. And you can snap it once, you can snap it twice. The point is, when you drop your rod tip, what you're doing is you're letting your bait hit the bottom. And when I come up real hard, I'm taking that slack up, and then it's gonna explode off the bottom. Versus, you know, if I were just to start way up high and dragging it, all I'm doing is dragging it like a jig on the bottom at that point. I wanna drop it and pop it twice or pop it once. But it's a real hard snap. You want your bait to shoot up off the bottom instead of come forward off the bottom. There's a big difference between that, but a big part of that key is to allow you to have that slack line and drop your rod tip. And when you drop your rod tip, that gives you a little bit more slack line to create that explosion. The majority of your bites are either going to happen on the fall of the initial cast, which is what we had, and then we're just basically almost trying to emulate it by getting more initial drops. So we're popping it way up off the bottom and letting it fall. And generally, as soon as your bait hits that peak and starts falling, that's where you're going to get the bites. Like that last one hit right at as soon as I as soon as I snapped it, it hit right there as it began to fall back down. And the key with that is when you feel that bite, don't pull right into them. Reel up, take your slack, and then just sweep into them. That you'll get a much better hook set that way instead of just trying to reel right up into them. I don't think he's huge, but they're all nice. Come on. Not a giant. It's all fun though. Tube's getting chewed up a little bit. Throw one back out there. It's a really good technique. Tubes are a great bait for it. Another one that a lot of people don't really ever do, except some smallmouth guys do it, but you can fish your Ned rigs in a really similar fashion. You get a heavier Ned rig and just fish it the same way. Just let it fall to the bottom. Couple hard snaps, really similar in style. I tend to prefer the tube for this just because the tube gives me some additional movement, but don't be afraid to sleep on a Ned rig as well. The other thing I want to point out too is the tackle. So I know this is kind of a finessey presentation, you know, being a small tube, but it is a 1/4 ounce, and I'm really trying to be aggressive with my gear. So, you know, the rod that I'm using, this is a 7.3 light medium action. So it's not a super light rod, fast action, because I really, you know, if you have a moderate speed rod, when I go to snap it, your rod will absorb a lot of that, and you don't want that. You really want your bait to explode. And then I've got 10-pound, this is Berkley X9 fluorocarbon to a 10-pound Berkley 100% leader, fluorocarbon leader. So having the braid, I think I may have said fluorocarbon, but it's an X9 braid mainline to a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. You know, I'm fishing really clear water, and if I were really truly finesse fishing, I would be going with probably a 6 or an 8-pound. But in this case, because I am being aggressive, I really do want to beef up my tackle just a little bit. You can throw a bait caster for sure and do this. I just feel like it's a little bit easier when you're talking about fishing a small bait like this just on your spinning gear. You know, if I'm stroking a jig, which is, I almost do that two-handed, it's a little bit different than this. That's heavier gear. I'd be throwing straight bait caster for that. Oh, heavy. Not giant, but heavies for their size. He hit that as soon as it came off the high point of that pop. That was one thing I actually didn't mention with respect to the tackle too. The reel I'm throwing is the Abu Garcia Revo Rocket, which is really good for this technique because it picks up so much line. It's if not the fastest reel on the market, it is one of the fastest, but it just picks up so much line per reel turn, so that when you do get hit up high like that, you can pick up that line real fast to set the hook, which is a really good thing. A slow speed reel, a low gear ratio reel is not what you want for this technique by any means. Here's one. Not a giant, but a decent one. They always have it. So I think I got the first part. I just caught this guy. A decent bass. Not giant, but a decent one. And I was just going to point out how I just had to switch batteries. I've been having trouble with the batteries. I actually missed, I think, a couple of fish catches before that one as well, but the same size, you know, 13 to 14 inch fish. But I just wanted to point out how versatile this technique is. You know, I'm really fishing a weed line inside of a weed line, meaning, you know, I'm fishing a green cabbage line, which is in about 10 foot of water, but there's more grass that goes out to about 16 and 18. It's just like a little bottom covering type grass, and the fish seem to relate better to the weed line that's in about that 8 to 10 foot range, which is much taller grass that grows up to within a couple of feet of the surface. But the point is, so I'm doing this on a weed line. You know, I love doing it on just flats in general, whether they're rock flats or sand flats, but you can do this down a 45-degree bank in the Ozark regions. You can do it pretty much anywhere. And it's a great way to cover a bunch of water too. You're not fishing real slow like you'd be dragging a tube normally. You know, a lot of people would just think, well, you got to know where the fish are. I love this technique for a search bait. It allows me to break down bigger areas and kind of find areas. You know, if I go over a big, say a weed line, and I get a couple of bites in an area, I generally can go back and fish something much slower where I got those bites and catch more fish that I missed with this. So it can be a great search bait. It can be a great bait to generate bites from fish that aren't active. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do on ledge lakes where you know there's fish there, but you can't get them to react to anything. Well, go crack a tube and you'll see that they'll react to it. You know, it's one of my favorite baits for that. But so many people think tubes are strictly a smallmouth bait, but they are fantastic for largemouth and spotted bass. I mean, they're really, honestly, they work for everything. You know, it's probably, if I had to guess, probably the #1 shape for crappie baits. You know, little 1.5-inch tubes. Guys catch walleye on them. You can catch, there's giant size ones for, oh, there's one. Giant size ones for lake trout and muskie. Like, this one feels a little better. It's just one of those shapes that people, or that fish really love. Man, this guy's pulling. I don't think he's a pike. Nope, that's a bass. Strong bass. Not even a giant, just a really strong fish. Oh, heavy fish. These are very, very healthy fish in this lake. And they are getting it. So, on that note, you know, that's close to 2 pounds. On that note, I'm probably going to end it because I do got to head in. The kids will be very unhappy with me if I'm late. But I just wanted to kind of show you what I do to crack a tube, and just a super fun technique. It's a little bit more aggressive, so if you're looking to really, you know, work work on, you know, some power fishing techniques or whatever. It's just a fun way to go. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate all the support. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.